Hi. So I am digging and checking frequently at the World Economic Forum to see what mischievous things they are up to. And we have a real problem, Houston, because uh, they are they have some new plans for religion. So I'm going to bring those to you. So let me share my screen. I apologize. I like am planting my crops, and so I haven't had time to memorize this whole thing. But I will have the document for you to download, and I also am going to make it an official document. Although as it is right now, it isn't all pretty. So I'm calling this the Serpentine Alliance, which is going to strangulate our faith. And as you can see, you're probably familiar with the World Economic Forum graphics by now. They are going to use religion to do several things. They are going to use religion to impact social movements, be a player or an actor, as they call it, in conflict and peace building. They are going to use religion and modify religions to accept their version or brands of gender norms and roles. They are going to address religion in ethics and law, and they are going to be talking about driving and steering faith and the global development. So we're going to see exactly what they're up to. So the summary, of course, you're going to hear a lot about Pope Francis because they're kind of using him as the poster child. So religion is everywhere on the global stage, from Pope Francis to the Islamic State, and from forced migration of refugees from the Middle East to the related responses made by populist politicians worldwide. Many contemporary issues have some relationship to religion. Both presently and throughout history, religion has been both the cause of many great ills and a force for hope and good. So what do they feel are the key issues? And we just did those a minute ago. Social movements, conflict and peace building, gender norms and roles, religion in ethics and law, faith and global development. COVID-19 has highlighted the interdependence of all people and the natural world. It was designed and engineered that way. The pandemic's disruption presents an opportunity to rebuild a world in which markets work for the whole society, which means your religion is no longer valid. The COVID-19 Response Alliance for Social Entrepreneurs, remember that, it's going to play an important part in just a few moments, will help faith-based organizations and social entrepreneurs enact radical changes and build a better future. And that's without your faith. In recent months, we have witnessed the courage and sacrifice so many people delivering healthcare and essential services. Of course, nowhere in this sentence do you hear anything about the faith-based, religions, Christianity, and as a matter of fact, they were considered non-essential and they were forbidden from activity. At the same time, there has been a sharp wake-up call about the gross inequities in testing, economic pain, even survival itself. For much of the world, especially the least developed countries, of which that's their agenda item, with only 1 or 2 doctors for every 10,000 people, the worst of the coronavirus still lays ahead. If this pandemic has revealed anything, it's that we are globally interdependent. And according to the World Economic Forum, it is time to pay attention and to change course. So have you read why social entrepreneurs are critical to our response and to the recovery from the COVID-19 crisis? And faith leaders, an untapped resource in protecting communities. A better world, one that nurtures human potential among the least of us, can only grow seeds of honest conversation as the holy texts of, well, they say all, and this is their words, these are not my words, of all major faiths attest, we reap what we sow. This is especially true in the natural world where droughts, fierce storms, accelerating extinctions, did you get that? Accelerating extinctions, rising seas, and now the coronavirus tell us that we are imperiling our own future. Well, I have news for them. I did not let loose this coronavirus. Their technological technocracy released that coronavirus. So we can, this is back to the World Economic Forum, we can't simply go back to the way things were. Markets are highly inefficient in distributing empathy, compassion, hope, and dignity, or even, as many have recently discovered, assigning true economic value with any degree of accuracy. We must build the world that we want out of this disruption so that markets work for the whole society, not just a few. That's a semantic shell game there. For what is the purpose of a free market if the people who make it possible are not themselves free? Well, with the World Economic Forum, if you think you're going to be free, I've reached to sell you in the desert. How we earn, how we spend, and how we sustain the world and each other need a radical rebalancing, and what they are going to do is turn to the different faiths in the world to be an actor in that. So, for example, why are millions of essential workers, nurses, garbage collectors, grocery clerks, and postal workers so poorly paid? Why have companies and markets failed so dramatically or spectacularly at anticipating, let alone balancing supply and demand for basic protective gear? And how can one even place a monetary figure on the freedom to walk without mortal fear of passing a stranger's cough or to attend a loved one's funeral? I mean, this is the ultimate fear-mongering. What monetary figure on the freedom to walk without mortal fear of passing a stranger's cough? I mean, if you're that fearful for your life, you really need to pray about that. So the markets are not infallible arbitrators of value. We have always lived in a world of kindness and cruelty, generosity and greed, hope and cynicism, love and hate, all in constant tension. But which of these prevail in our countries, companies, and communities ultimately depends upon the candor and the courage of the conversations we have with our leaders and the accountability we insist upon from them. Now we must embrace the moral imperative of radical change, not just change, but radical change, not just because it is right, and I don't believe it's right, but they believe it's right, because it is the only practical course of action that can save the world from a worse fate in years to come. And I am doing a study in Deuteronomy 32, and the biblical understanding of the word change is that it is perverse. So when you see in either government documents or political mimes or whatever, and it's talking about change, think that in the Bible they viewed change as perverseness. So I think that's really important. I will be getting into that in the days to come. Fortunately, recent events have shown us that rapid and radical change is in fact possible on a mass scale. Our challenge now is to channel it like the super highway 5G spirits and build upon it. And so they're going to, don't let a good crisis go to waste. That's what they're doing. What is the World Economic Forum doing in social innovation? So, innovative social entrepreneurs are addressing the world's most serious challenges, ranging from illiteracy to girls' education and disaster relief. To achieve maximum impact and to start to address root causes, they need greater visibility, credibility, access to finance, favorable policy decisions, and in some cases, a better understanding of global affairs. To me, this sounds like putting the cart before the horse. And instead of someone working their way up through like a corporate chain, so that they could understand all aspects of a business, they just want to be the president or the CEO. And that's what I see this as. One of the key drivers is a foundation called the Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship, and it is supporting more than 350 late-stage social entrepreneurs by providing an unparalleled global platform. And the foundation's goal is to highlight and expand innovative models of social innovation. It helps to strengthen and grow the field of social enterprise by showcasing its best-in-class examples, models for replication, and cutting-edge research on social innovation. What you're talking about, these are this social entrepreneurship is going to change the face of Christianity. It is their goal is to alter Christianity so that it will become one with the beast system. And if it does not become one with the beast system, it will be eradicated. So a bold response to this call for change is called the COVID-19 Response Alliance for Social Entrepreneurs. This is like a standing army of these social entrepreneurs, a new coalition of innovative social entrepreneurs, foundations, civil society, faith actors, and they are actors, corporations, international organizations, together with the Schwab Foundation and the World Economic Forum. And together they are going to change things on several fronts. Remember, change means perverseness. Synchronize the response. First, they will marshal and synchronize their response to alleviate the pandemic's impact on the excluded and most vulnerable populations and engage others in such service. Actually, what they will be doing is eliminating those vulnerable populations. I just was in the Federal Register the other day, and there is, since 9/11, most people are unaware that there is this extensive voluntary, there's different ones, voluntary service that was brought on by the events of 9/11. And senior citizens, every population is represented, children, teachers, engineers, it doesn't matter, it's men, women, vets, doctors, nurses, church, pastors, that type of thing. But in the Federal Register, 2 weeks ago, it said we are removing the senior citizens from the ability to volunteer their services. Now, in a way, that's a good thing, because there is a deep, dark agenda to this voluntary service program, which we can talk about in a different time. Also, the second thing, they are going to leverage trust in faith-based organizations. So no longer are you just going to have your compromised 503c churches. You are also going to have your clergy response team, and you are also going to have your faith-based initiatives that is going to be handled by the World Economic Forum. So in good times, these faith-based organizations and social entrepreneurs provide at least 1/3 of the primary health care in many countries in Africa, according to the Christian health associations. The Religions for Peace estimates this figure to be significantly higher in places affected by humanitarian disasters where governments struggle to cope with the needs. These partnerships have established a vital reservoir of trust, and in times of hardship and rapid change, trust is among the most important capital, and so they are going to capitalize on trust. They want to add their voice to the great transformation as the World Economic Forum explores the fundamental challenges of creating opportunity, equity, economic growth, and sustainability in a post-pandemic world. We will add our voices to the global call for a more humane, as in there is a humane way to euthanize you, and ecological measures, which also means to euthanize humans to make progress, as well as the rules and incentives to transform these high ideals into an everyday reality. This is really scary, you guys. So, and they are very serious. Understand the civic and political life as an expression of love. Remember, in scripture it says, and they will kill you and think that they are doing service unto the Lord, paraphrased. One value that we believe should guide such conversations is love, a word that makes many political and business leaders strangely uncomfortable. In this context, love is much deeper and broader than a romantic sentiment, which they are highly discouraging. It is a courageous acknowledgement of interdependence, even obligation to one another as fellow human beings. That's why the poster child, Pope Francis, has identified civic and political life as among the highest possible expression of love. I don't think the Bible agrees, but some 800 years ago, St. Francis of Assisi showed the world that institutions cannot forever cater to the rich and powerful without sacrificing their moral authority and their vital connection with the natural world or their own sense of every life's intrinsic equality. In modern terms, we would consider him a social entrepreneur, a person who has a deep love and his own organizational abilities changed the way millions perceived the poor and revitalized the purpose of institutions, restored people's relationship with nature, and demonstrated the enduring power of faith to affect change. This pandemic is not just a health crisis. It never was just a health crisis. It was to bring the world to a stop and to inject the venom of Satan into the world and the beast system and all that comes with it. It's also a crisis of faith in many of the assumptions, the systems and institutions that have utterly failed us. Well, I don't know about the World Economic Forum, but my Jesus has not failed me. Without faith and hope in the future, it doesn't say in Jesus. My hope and faith is in Jesus, but their hope and faith is in the future. People have little to live for. With faith, however, in all its rich and varied dimensions, anything is possible. So let's get started with the hard work and the hard conversations together, because whether you consider yourself an idealist or realist, the path forward will be hard and steep in the years to come. You better believe it. Let's at least make sure we are headed in a direction that most people can believe in and rebuild a future of hope, value, and the possibility for all people in the natural world we call home. Well, this is totally impossible without Jesus Christ. And this was published on May 4th of this year. So social entrepreneurs are battling at the forefront of this pandemic to serve the most vulnerable populations using their ingenuity to confront the problems on the ground. This alliance will support them with their mission at the time when they are needed ever more. Hilda Schwab, co-founder and chairperson of Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. So, what is the COVID Response Alliance for Social Entrepreneurs? So, basically, it is an unprecedented collaboration between 40 global organizations to support social entrepreneurs in pooling knowledge, experience, and responses to alleviate suffering, which the main driver of that, or the main to relieve suffering, means euthanizing people that are suffering in this new world, and to advance new models of change, perverseness, for this more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable satanic world. So the Alliance members currently support 15,000 social entrepreneurs, helping 1.5 billion people cumulatively in over 190 countries. And so you've got to see that this is one reason to be prepared, because you don't want to be involved or have any entanglements with these 15,000 social entrepreneurs that want to change your faith into a perverse act. So this kind of gives you, they've got the 15,000 social entrepreneurs, the 40 global organizations, 75 million US dollars have been mobilized in all of the countries. So this is war. This is war against humanity. And so what are these social entrepreneurs going to be doing? They're supposedly going to protect livelihoods. Well, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. Mitigating millions of tons of CO2, you know, the climate change. Improving access to health, sanitation, education, energy, driven social inclusion movements for the disabled, the homeless, and the refugee status. Remember, it's about euthanizing. It's about killing those people off, no matter what their fancy words. That is called beautification of euthanization. Beautification of euthanization. That's what's being talked about here. So they say that they're going to provide access to food and water. Yeah, you get access of 1.2 ounces of laboratory or insect protein a week, and you get 35 grams of a carbohydrate with no sweets every 21 days. That's your access. And I haven't dug into the water. I'm sorry, but I haven't. So how will the Alliance support the social entrepreneurs that are, you know, kind of like the lead of the pack or something? They're going to have a joint action forum that aggregates action across impact first organizations. They're going to maximize their support. They're going to identify, coordinate, and maximize the availability of resources. They're going to be highly visibility under one umbrella, and they are designed not to replace, but to amplify individual responses, as long as those responses are in unity with the global agenda. And they are also going to use existing channels. And this basically is your visual for that. So Damaji is supporting the front lines, carrying out community-based contract tracing by working with governments and in the USA and Togo to respond to COVID. But we can't do it alone. Social entrepreneurs are mobilizing to respond to a myriad of massive needs being exposed by the pandemic. We are thrilled to be represented in this alliance through the Catalyst 2030. So we can help inform and steer the alliance towards the needs of social entrepreneurs. And here's just a few of the people and groups that are involved in this. Of course, there are many others. So how will the alliance help me as a social entrepreneur? So basically, there is something called CASE. It is the Center for the Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship at Duke University, or it's at covidcap.com. And this is a dashboard that is a searchable database of emergency funds available to nonprofit and for-profit entrepreneurs during the COVID-19 and contains global capital relief worth over $1 trillion. Of course, does that go to the average person? Absolutely not. It does not. It goes to these nonprofit or profit entrepreneurs who are in alignment with the global government. So now we're going to go in, talk for just a few moments on how faith fits into this. So they say a lack of knowledge is hindering collaboration between faith-based and secular aid groups. I would actually, the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge or vision. So I think it's actually adding to their credibility at this season. There is a growing awareness that religion is a factor to be reckoned with to tackling environmental changes, peace building, improving education, and supporting economic growth. But there is a lack of knowledge about the practical contributions of religious actors to the International Development Work Project. This applies to the impact of beliefs and behavior on development and to the particular ways in which religion factors into key development sectors. Education-related goals are at the center of the global development agenda and tend to deal glancingly with religious dimensions, if at all. Yet religious institutions play significant roles in national and international education systems and approaches. Religiously affiliated schools fill in critical gaps in rural areas and in countries with underdeveloped infrastructure. Christian schools in particular have also been associated with colonization, however, and have contributed to the marginalization of Islam and other minority communities in a way that creates parallel and unequal systems. I don't agree with that statement. This is their words. You just need to know what's coming at you. Global health is another realm where religious actors provide key sources of aid, but can also become hindrances if they are not properly recognized and engaged. One example occurred during a recent Ebola outbreak in West Africa, when the international health organizations failed to connect religious actors and gain their help in suspending traditional burial practices in order to limit the spread of disease. Similarly, religious actors who are often on the front lines of administering healthcare to rural populations around the world can play an important role in combating the spread of antimicrobial resistance, though when global health experts fail to incorporate or train them in the best practices, they may inadvertently become major drivers of the emergence and the spread of drug-resistant bacteria. So they're slipping in the agenda here. While religion and religious actors play significant roles in the global development efforts, they too often are absent from the formulation of the mainstream development policy and practices. So what about religion in ethics and law? A better grasp on the role of religion could help us address global challenges. That's what they say. Ethics and values based on religion shape laws and policies and factor into global governance. In order to fully understand the systems of laws and governance, and to build consensus on global challenges, one must therefore consider how religion factors into identities and responses to complex issues. Religious traditions are increasingly used by governments to achieve policy goals. Now, this I found really interesting. So the United Nations launched the Fez plan. The Fez is a type of Islamic hat of action in 2017, which guides religious leaders on how to use their influence to prevent violent atrocities. I would say, except those sanctioned violent atrocities, those are okay to do. At the same time, the intersection of law and religion continues to be a source of friction for many countries as the domestic courts consider questions about free exercise, establishment, and accommodation of diverse religious practices. And then it goes into some examples about a gay couple and a cake. Similarly, issues like nuclear proliferation, climate change, and the refugee crisis have raised questions about responsibility, sharing, and shared governance, and an understanding of how morality, ethics, and religion influence the policies and approaches of multinational institutions is essential for consensus building and action. Questions to be considered include whether there is a shared set of values across national borders, for example, human rights, upon which joint action can be based, and how religion can help or harm such efforts. And then they give this example, addressing the forced displacement of refugees in the Middle East and North Africa, for example, could be encouraged by highlighting religious narratives of displacement, including the Jewish Exodus narrative, the flight of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph to Egypt, and the migration of Muhammad from Mecca to Medina. See, it's like this one world religion altogether. Many first responders and aid workers in conflict and crisis situations are already religiously motivated, though ironically, populist political movements in the West based on religious or socioeconomic identity often thwart international efforts to address global issues. Regardless of how religious belief motivates certain people, religion often plays a fundamental role in legitimizing political and legal systems, and therefore it must be taken into account in order to make real progress in their shared challenges. The conflict and peace building, we know very little about the exact role that religion plays in conflict situations or peace building efforts. Religion intersects with related economic, social, and political factors in complex ways, and religious communities are often arrayed on opposite sides of the same issue. And I argue with myself at times on different issues. So still, evidence suggests that religion plays a significant role in both the causes of conflict and in the path to peace and reconciliation. Religion is a clear identity marker, and if show notes, you can look at some of these cases that they cite so that you get a better idea of what they're talking about. Once again, they talk about Pope Francis, for example, used a 2014 visit to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem to embrace an imam and a rabbi and call on Christians, Jews, and Muslims to love one another. Actually, he was he had already bought part of the old city of Jerusalem. Impact on social movements. So I'm just going to breeze over this. They're talking about interpreting religious texts and traditions to incorporate them into their social justice vision. And so that's what they're going to do. And they want to have religious groups to have cutting-edge initiatives to combat racial, economic, educational disparities around the globe, and also have initiatives related to education, gender, racial justice, and health. What about faith in God? What about learning His Word? What about the Bible? You know, and they really don't like the fact, if you read down here, that Western countries promote the idea of being white, Christian, and heterosexual. They really don't like that. They think that that needs to be uprooted to achieve racial justice and gender parity. And of course, then that's the next thing that they want to get into is they want to change Christianity to accept all the perversions and that the world knows, from killing babies to just everything. I mean, it's comprehensive, and it's the first steps are to take and deal with gender and religion. And they say that our traditional backward attitudes related to gender is complex, and that we really need to change this. And then that's what they're going to do. They're going to bring out a Muslim and Christian women together to advocate for peace, and LGBTI advocacy groups through the roles tend to be nuanced. So they're going to just worm their way in. They are going to do this partially with the way that people are dressed, and I will be getting into that in a future broadcast. So anyway, that's what the World Economic Forum was focused on last week. There is going to be a whole month of perversion in June. They've dedicated it to this gender parity. So we are going to get slammed in videos, in the news. It's going to be perversion, perversion, perversion. So you might as well brace for it. Plan your talking points, whatever you want to do. And this week, they have moved on to, I think, blockchain. So this week, they are highlighting blockchain. And so that's changing the face of finance. So anyway, that's it for this segment.